Hello and welcome back to AEF TV in association with Engerati. We have got our last interview now. I think, Lisa, welcome to the studio. I think both you're grateful of the fact that it's the last interview. I certainly am. So we're like, woo. But look, you know, you've been at the event for 2 days now. You've participated in a panel as well, and one of the themes that's coming out is, you know, getting things done. You know, how do we get things done? And what I'd like to ask you is, you know, what are some of the obstacles to getting it done? You know, private equity fund. You know, what are some of those that are being pulled out?
Sure. So I'm now in a private equity fund. We're about 18 months old, but before that I was a developer as well. So I've been to AEFs throughout the years. And you know, the topics are always very similar. And frankly, Africa is not anything special. It's the same across any markets what these bottlenecks are to close. I think what's different this year and what's exciting is that you're seeing many more projects get over the line. And some of the key bottlenecks are being addressed by the various governments. So for me, the top bottleneck in any of the developments is always the political will to get the deal done. So you need the counterparty on, you know, whether it's government, off-taker, permitting, they all need to work together to get a deal done. And if that political will isn't there, things are very slow. In the earlier AEFs, one deal a year would reach financial close. The past 2 years, I think we've seen that take off, not only from South Africa and Nigeria, but the medium-sized markets as well. So then if you've gotten that one taken care of, I think you start to go to some of the other second-order bottlenecks. And one of the ones I focused on my panel this time was on fuel supply. And really, for me, you know, two aspects. I focus a lot on gas-fired generation around Africa. We're active in West Africa, active in Nigeria, and in a region that is actually blessed with so much gas. It's been one of the key reasons that projects haven't reached financial close. We're involved in the Azure.
Because there's so much gas, projects haven't.
Because there's so much gas, but you can't get the gas to the plant.
Right.
And there are a lot of reasons that's the case. In Nigeria, there's a lot of gas, but the government kept the regulated price of gas so low that none of the gas suppliers were incentivized to sell any gas. And so they'd be dragged over years to the table and finally did it so that basically they could access the oil. Now the government has opened up, and in our project we have the first willing buyer, willing seller contract with a commercial price. So one that incentivizes the supplier to actually get the gas out of the ground, processed, pipeline to the plant.
So, but this is also a narrative, not just in Africa, but around the world. I was reading an Economist article about fuel subsidies, you know, places like the Philippines and Indonesia, and that there's a, you know, there is a macroeconomic need to remove them. I mean, not overnight, obviously, because that create chaos, but you know, in order to make some of this happen.
It is true. It's deregulating that gas market in places that traditionally have placed too much regulation on it, and then it becomes an infrastructure issue. So with the gas prices going down worldwide, how do you get that into Africa? And I've seen a lot of projects in development now to bring in LNG, floating regasification units, or even land-based regasification units is what we did in our past in Latin America, and worked very well. And what's new this year too is you've seen a number of those around Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, up and down the east and west coast. And I'm hopeful that next AEF, some of those will have come to fruition, or maybe in 2 AEFs. But these are the types of solutions now. Now that you have the political will and the government's willing to come to the table and finalize the PPAs and the government guarantees and things, how do you actually get the fuel to the plant?
Because that was another thing that was quite interesting. I mean, we had an interview with Rod earlier on, who actually founded AEF, you know, and he was saying that, you know, some of the biggest changes that he found is that the governments, the ministries, and their internal governance, too many gov words, you know, has increased so much, and the technical and technocratic ability within those governments is actually really one of a big catalyst to making people go, yeah, okay, we'll invest in here.
It is, absolutely. From my perspective as private equity, I want to make one investment and then I want to have follow-on investments, and every country is very specific. I mean, there's more regional integration these days, but so I don't want to go into a country and do one small project and leave. And so when I look at the countries, I look at which ones are opening up their markets and are welcoming that investment. And you can do your first one, in a few years you can do another one. And once they build that capacity in the government, then it's there. So there are some countries that haven't done that yet, and even though there's a real demand for power, there's not going to close any deals, and so it's not worth it. You're watching and waiting until that government develops that political will.
And do you think that there is, and I'm just talking as a macro observation and an observation of human nature, do you think there's going to be a Me Too effect? Because there are countries who are looking at the PPP projects in South Africa and other things that are going on, and they're like going, well, actually, I want some of that as well. And they're realizing that in order to get some of that, they need to behave in this way, otherwise it's never going to happen.
I do think that, and I think you're seeing that snowball in the past year or two. I think for many years, really, over the past 10 years, it's very slow and very hard. And I think with the success in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya, the other countries are sort of waking up more to that. I think this conference helps kind of bring that to light. I mean, you read about it in the news and here and there, but there are very few events where it's a full continental presence here, and so that spreads the word, and might be self-serving because hopefully time-wise our new fund is poised to take advantage of that acceleration of the market.
Well, so that's another input, new funds coming in that are ready to invest in Africa, and I'd like to draw a link to something you also said when we were chatting off air about, deals are being closed, and you closed a couple as a result of being at AEF in Barcelona. Can you talk about those?
I sure have. I mean, in my former capacity, I came to AEF when I was a developer, so I knew the kind of people that come to this conference. And you get set in your regions and you see your people. I live in Johannesburg. I see the people in Joburg all the time. But it's rare that you have people from all different parts of the continent, and people coming from the States and Europe and Asia all at the same place. It's almost a mixture of a high school reunion and speed dating.
Yeah.
But it's from that, when you see everybody, that we actually have our first 2 deals for our fund in Africa really originated at Barcelona. And I think these are people that in one case I hadn't met before, and was put together by mutual contacts, and another I knew vaguely but didn't know what they were up to. And by being at that conference all in the same place, I'm proud to say that.
And that's what these face-to-face events are for, because there are certain discussions, no matter what happens in the digital age, that you can only have face-to-face, and you're only willing to share. So we're coming to the end of our time now. I'm going to throw you a little curveball, but I hope it's not too great a curveball. If I turn you, because this is the last interview, right? We can have a bit of fun. If I turn you into a roving reporter for a minute, let's imagine that was your job while you were here. Yeah, what are some of the things that you've seen, not in terms of the people at the conference, but the themes and the subjects and the thematics that are coming out, where you're like, oh, that's interesting, and I'm glad that's happening.
That's a good question. I mean, I think the one I mentioned before in the fuel supply, I think that's a big one, and you're seeing power players that generally have focused only on the power plant move up and downstream, because they realize if they sit and wait for everything to happen at the power plant, it's not going to happen. I think similarly, you're seeing a lot more financial players, ourselves included, who recognize that if you sit there and wait till financial close to invest your money, you're not going to get into any projects. So you need to start a lot earlier. And even though I'm not the person on the ground doing the permitting and the PPA negotiation, I need to be alongside that person and potentially funding that person in order to be able to invest a significant chunk of capital at close. So you can't focus narrowly anymore. You need to be up and down.
Well, that's a narrative that's been coming through as well, where people saying, actually, exactly what you said. We almost need to be along every step of the way, and give help, fund. The other thing that's come through for me is, last year a lot of people were talking about renewables, and obviously, and that's great. But it's also this conversation around gas, because you need base load in order to make renewables work. That's another thing that feels to me like it's really hotted up a bit. I don't know whether you think the same thing.
I mean, from our perspective, we're technology agnostic. We'll work with thermal, work with renewables. It really depends on what makes sense for the market. and what will happen quickly. And I think that in some places renewables make a lot of sense. We're working on a wind project in Senegal that's half the cost of the current power supply there because it's based on liquid fuels. But in Nigeria, gas makes the most sense. I mean, it's the most economical, it's baseload and
they've got a whacking great big reserve right at their doorstep. You know,
exactly.
you would have thought, you know,
exactly.
that makes sense. Well, on that note, we're going to end it. You'll be pleased to know we've done nearly 15 minutes. So nice to have you in the studio. Nice to chat to you, and again next year, we can continue the conversation. Thank you as well for watching. This has been the final interview at a very busy and successful Africa Energy Forum. Lots of interesting things have happened. Challenging for me as well, interviewing 18 students who've been here as an initiative by EnergyNet. But as they say, it's a wrap, and I hope you enjoyed all the interviews. Thank you.